Back in 2006, majority of RPG fans eagerly awaited the next Elder Scrolls game, Oblivion. That fact alone made other RPGs overlooked, especially the game that we are going to talk about in this video. Gothic 3 got released in the late 2006 in Europe and a month later in North America. Despite the success that the Gothic franchise had in Europe, Gothic games were not so well known in America. But we aren't here to talk about the marketing of this game. I want to compare some mechanics of Gothic 3 with Skyrim, the game that came out almost 6 years after Gothic 3. And if you watched any of my videos on this channel, you can easily see that I based almost my whole content around Skyrim, so it's not a secret that I'm a big fan of this game. However, since I also played a lot of Gothic 3 back in the day, and even nowadays I still play it, I want to show the people who love Skyrim how Gothic 3 was so much ahead of its time with certain game designs. So let's begin. Many of you who just heard about Gothic 3, you probably also heard the game was a buggy mess when it came out, which is the truth, but we can also state the fact that Skyrim was a buggy mess when it first came out in 2011, and you didn't see that taken in consideration that much when it comes to reviews. Gothic 3, on the other hand, was torn apart for its bugs, mainly because Gothic 2 has set a high standards for this franchise, but that's a topic for another video. Eventually, both games got major patches by community that fixed 99% of these bugs, so we're talking about unofficial patches by fans and not the developers. Enough about the technical things, let's jump right into the beginning of Gothic 3. You get a cutscene coming to the boat with a bunch of your well-known friends from the past games. You arrive in a town named Ardea, which is in the middle of orc enslaving people because they pretty much won the war against humans in Murtana and some parts of Normar as well. Only Varant, the desert part of the world map, is not affected directly by orcs, since they have an agreement with Hashishins, people that live in those parts, but more about them later. Cutscene ends, and when orcs see you and your armed friends, they immediately attack you and the whole town. They probably think this is a rebel attack, since all the other humans, or Moras as they call them, which is an orc slang for humans, are either slaves or orc mercenaries. You get some tutorial hints about the combat, which is pretty basic stuff, and you start fighting the orcs. This won't be that hard, but that also depends on difficulty you choose. We will talk about the gameplay really soon after this, but I want to point out what happens when the intro fight ends and the freedom that the player gets. The first thing you probably do in a new open world RPG is take a closer look on the world map, right? Well, the thing is, you don't get a map right at the beginning of Gothic 3, you can just open your quest log and you can indeed see the whole world map and the compass, but you can't see your current position. But here's a little tip, if you loot all the corpses in town, and you should really loot everything that you can because you don't have an inventory limit at all, you can find the map that orcs use and voila, you can see more clearly now. One thing to know, if you're already not seeing for yourself, you won't find the same numbers of towns on this map as your quest log map. This is because there are certain rebel camps or villages, if you will, and orcs are not sure where those places are, but they know they exist. Anyway, back to the map. If you're coming to this from Skyrim or Oblivion, you will probably expect loading screens between the areas, towns, houses, etc, etc. To the surprise of many people, Gothic 3 has no load screens. You just load your game and bang, that's it. Everything is open and dense, and everything is hand placed. And that was in 2006, just keep that in mind. Well, how about the world size in general? I'm glad you asked. Like I mentioned before, you have three major regions. Murtana is in the middle, and it's a forest area, green and really pretty to look at even by today's standards. In the north you have the place called Normar, a little bit smaller than Murtana according to the map, and on the far south you have Varant, the desert area. So the world itself has much variety between those three major areas. I can compare the actual world size of Gothic 3 to Skyrim or Oblivion, but I can safely say without a doubt you will never walk to the landscapes of nothingness like in Oblivion. There is stuff to be found on every corner. We have to take in mind though that we don't have mounts like in Skyrim, but even if you just walk and run through Skyrim, it never feels bigger than Gothic 3 to me. Maybe this is because that there is a lot of mountains in Skyrim, but this is more a subjective feel, so don't take my word for it. I can assure you it's really big. The last thing I want to mention about the world is really important also. You know, you can casually walk anywhere in Skyrim early on and not feel the sense of danger because everything levels up with you. You can do that in Gothic 3 also, but only if you're good at running and avoiding stuff that will kill you in one hit or make you sick, poison, damage your stamina, etc, etc. We can compare it to the likes of Fallout New Vegas and the Death Cloud encounter early on. I don't know for a fact if the world of Gothic 3 is leveling with you, but there is certainly a sense of danger. For example, you can just stumble on a strong monster or bandit or camp and so on, especially when you're off the beaten path. You do feel accomplished and rewarded when you can finally kill those monsters and NPCs that gave you so much trouble, so there is a good progression curve to the game, which leads us to the next topic, and that's leveling and gameplay. Certain things you do in Gothic 3 gives you experience points. Doing quests, killing stuff, discovering new locations. When you level up you get 10 learning points and you can spend them at different trainers or shrines, although trainers won't teach you for free even if you have enough learning points. For example, if you want to get the strong sword fighter skill, you will need 150 strength and a skilled sword fighter. These attribute points can be increased also at trainers for a small amount of learning points and some gold. Certain strong skills or spells can only be taught by special NPCs in the world, usually at high positions in the cities or at slightly hidden places. This feels really immersive to me and it makes sense. You can't just open your magic tab and click on the thing you want to learn. I'm looking at you, Skyrim. There are no quest marks in Gothic 3 at all. You just talk to the NPC and your quest log fills in with some basic directions. It may seem intimidating at first, but you will be just fine, believe me. One thing that may surprise you about the quests, you don't have to take the quest in order to complete it. You can actually do it by accident and it will appear in your quest log. Main quest at the beginning is just straightforward find Zardes, and you can ask any major NPC in every town about him to get hints where he might be, but you don't have a clue where he is. Just like Skyrim, I finished the main quest only a couple of times and I'm usually just wandering around doing quests for different factions in towns, so side quests are plenty.
There's no pity for the weak, only pain and death.
There are a couple of factions in a game and you can increase the reputation with them by helping them. However, you got to watch out because this will probably affect their opposing faction with negative reputations towards yourself.
Leave me alone.
And at a certain number of minus reputation, members of that faction will attack you on a site. But you will have to do a bunch of quests for one faction in order for this to happen. There are certain quests that will make you visit all the areas in the game in order to complete it, so they can be really long. Or you can simply choose to ignore it if you don't like it, of course. One major thing worth mentioning, there is a thing called Revolution, in which you can participate if you're working with the rebels of Mortana or with the nomads of Varant. Of course you can go the other way around and work with the orcs and Hashishins and maybe kill the guys we mentioned before. But it won't be an RPG if you don't have choices and maybe decide to do it yourself with no help at all. Melee combat in Gothic 3 seems really floaty at first, but there is a challenge to be found here for sure. I highly recommend to turn on the alternate AI in the options and play the game at least on medium or hard. If you choose to go with melee weapons, you'll have a lot of choices. One-handed with a shield, two-handed swords, axes, polearms and battle staves. One-handed weapons has its own set of animations and set of attacks, which differs a bit when you're carrying a shield. Two-handed swords, axes, polearms and battle staves share the same animations. Dual wielding has its own set of animations and attacks. Effectiveness and speed of these attacks can be of course improved by skills. Me personally, I have played a lot of the game as pure melee character. You have bows and crossbows of course, and appropriate hunter skills like Game Hunter, Big Game Hunter, Orc Hunter, Silent Hunter, etc, etc. Skills that let you collect hide, teeth, claws and horns. Overall, using the bows in this game feels good. Bear in mind that crossbows need strength and not the hunting skill like the bows. If you like using the bows in RPGs, you can't go wrong here. Last, but certainly not least, we got the magic system, which is by far the most interesting style of combat in Gothic 3. You have magic skills that will help you cast certain spells but you also have a whole new spell tab dedicated to the magic system. We have Magic of Dominance, Transforming Magic and Summoning Magic. Each spell, in order to be learned, requires certain number of ancient knowledge points, which can be learned at the mage trainers, who can also of course teach you these spells. Important thing to know, you can learn some magic spells at Enos and Beliar shrines. Enos shrines will teach you Magic of Dominance and Beliar shrine Summoning Magic. In order to learn the transformation magic, you'll have to find druids in the world. Also bear in mind, if you have alternate balancing turned on, it will be a little harder to learn some stronger spells because they will require some more stuff learned before them. But I highly recommend you to turn on the alternate balancing that comes with the community patch 1.75. The last thing that I want to talk about is gear. Remember when we mentioned reputations with the factions? Well, the reputation plays a big part in getting the armor you want. You can buy some regular armor with low protection from a lot of NPCs, but in order to get better armors you will need a certain reputation number. So people will need to trust you before they sell you the armor of their soldiers, which kinda makes sense to me in an immersive way.
Stop it!
But I've seen people who are not used to this limitation and therefore they don't like it. Weapons don't work like this and you'll be able to find them, buy them or craft them. Certain weapons will require different skills before you can use them. I could go on and on about the game, but the video is getting really long. There is a lot more I didn't cover, but if you're planning to play this game yourself, you're in for a treat. This video was aimed mostly towards Skyrim players and Elder Scrolls gamers in general. Of course, I hope everyone will be able to recognize something appealing about this game and give it a go. One more thing before I end this, there is a brand new game called Alex by the same developers coming out October 17. Check that out if you're interested. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Stay tuned.